I'm sorry I broke your heart, mother.
Beautiful.
You like it?
What a way to come into this.
Do I sound like Otis Campbell?
You do. You really do.
I really wanted to channel his singing voice. Welcome to The Loaded Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris.
And you are going to be seeing us on camera for the first time. We're making our YouTube debut. We, a few years ago, or less than a year ago, we interviewed actress Ruta Lee, and she told us that we had beautiful faces. She also told us we had beautiful rear ends, but she told us we had beautiful faces. So we thought we'd try to share them.
Aaron really took it to heart.
I did. How you doing?
I'm good. It's been a little bit since you and I communicated, a day or two. The sun's shining. I'm feeling, as far as middle of winter goes, feeling solid. I know we like to keep this evergreen, so I wasn't going to say the month,
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's January, but we won't say the actual date.
All right. Sounds good. It's the 45th of January.
The 45th of January. So today we're doing one of my all-time favorite episodes, and I've said this to you before. If you didn't enjoy this, Christopher, or if you just thought this was middle of the road, this is going to break my heart.
I did love this one.
Good. Okay.
I have been happy with the recent episodes. Hear me out.
Yes. I hear you out. So, of course, we're doing Citizen's Arrest, which is just a classic. Has so many quotable lines. I could probably recite this episode by heart. It's one that I have watched over and over and over. It's hilarious. So amusing. Yes.
It progresses well. For such a short show, it has a lot of character arc for Barney, and it's all stays in. Good Gomer. Opie's involved. Andy gets to have the upper hand. So good. And I think one of the things I love about this episode, and I think, and after doing these back to back to back and watching these with you, and you're talking about sometimes because you see Barney do something and you're kind of like, why are you doing this? I mean, Barney overreacts and he gets mad and his pride gets hurt. But you can understand why Barney is just so irate about the whole thing. Oh, yeah, this would boil my blood. Barney's never been a politically minded person.
No.
He's black and white, the law.
No. I watched that Deadwood movie a couple of years, and they, I don't know, did you ever watch Deadwood?
I've seen it. I've seen some of the first season, but never watched the movie. I think you hated the movie, right?
No, I liked the movie. I don't know who you were talking to who said they didn't like the movie.
All right. I don't know then. I probably made it up then.
You might have. Well, in the movie, Al Swearingen, who is the kind of the gangster of the town, goes up to the marshal, Seth Bullock, who's played by Timothy Olyphant. And he just says to Timothy Olyphant as he's trying to deal with something, he goes, have you ever dealt with anybody and just not gone directly at them? And he goes, no. And I think that pretty much sums Barney Fife up to it, too.
Yeah, I think so, too.
So you ready to dive in?
I would love to dive in. Let's do a U-turn and get this party started.
All right. So this episode first aired on December 16th, 1963, when TBS, the Superstation, aired its 25th anniversary special. That's what they called it back in the day.
All right.
They aired it. It said, Jim Nabors said this was his favorite episode.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Jim Nabors.
Thanks, Jim Nabors. So we open with Andy and Barney going through files and singing. And Everett Greenbaum, who co-wrote the script for Jim Fritzell, said this wasn't scripted, that Andy and Don just loved to sing on the set.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
That's fun. All right. I didn't. Normally, I feel like when that happens, I've gotten pretty good at thinking that this is an improv moment. Missed it on this one.
So they come across the receipt for Barney's first revolver. Turns out he's been on the job 10 years, and they start getting sentimental with Andy telling him how proud he is of him.
Really, it was like when, you celebrated my first anniversary and second anniversary of being on the Loaded Goat with you.
We didn't broadcast it because Christopher got too emotional.
Yeah, and we also spent some time in Finland. We spitzed. It was a really nice time.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
We spitzed. Okay, that's how we bond here on the Loaded Goat, apparently. Have you spitzed with Randy Turner yet? That's the question.
I have. Of course I have.
All right. Well, he will. He's probably not ashamed that you're sharing that on the loaded goat.
Mm-mm.
No, he's probably comfortable with that. Barney starts to get emotional. Opie comes in and Barney takes off. And, he's confused why Barney's just kind of rushing out the door. And Andy tells him that Barney has a cold and he doesn't want him to catch it.
I get that. I mean, with everything going around these days, you got COVID, you got RSV, you got the flu. Who knows?
And you got Barney Fife's emotions.
Running high.
Which I think leads us to this next scene where Barney is sitting in his patrol car and Gomer comes out of the post office and makes a U-turn. And Barney just freaks out and pulls him over.
I'm proud of Gomer for how he handles this.
I mean, he's so easygoing at first.
Yeah. What is the official business he says he's on?
Well, he says he's on official business, like he's in an emergency vehicle because he's in a wrecker. But he's,
it was because it was a wrecker. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But of course, it's just a postcard and a copy of Mechanics Monthly is all he was going to the post office for.
I kept missing that because I was like paying attention to see, like, I was really hoping that he had been hired as like a postman or something. But
so Barney rips into Gomer and goes to write him a ticket. A crowd is gathering. I mean, I guess, it is kind of a big scene for a traffic violation, but Gomer's still trying to be easygoing about it. But he's asking Barney not to write him the ticket, and Barney just won't budge, and he gives him the ticket, and Gomer tells him to go up in an alley and holler fish, which I've never heard before, but
I've never heard that either.
I've never heard it before other than this episode, but I think it's just a term for just shut up or something like that. It's something, yeah.
Go up an alley and holler fish.
Yeah. You should use that in a meeting sometime.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a little bit of a combative environment where I'm telling someone in old timey language to can it, but I don't know.
Go up in an alley and holler fish, or just scream nip it, nip it, nip it. Yeah, just try that.
I've done that before.
Yeah, there you go. So Barney then gives a speech about how we're all in this together, and he's just trying to uphold the law. But then he overplays his hand, and he says if he was just an ordinary citizen and saw this, he would have to make a citizen's arrest, which is just like putting a gun in Gomer's hand at this point.
Totally. And I also think it's what started Dog the Bounty Hunter's career.
A citizen's arrest? You think he saw this episode?
This moment. He was young and impressionable at this time when this episode came out, December 16th. In whatever 1963. Year you said. I mean, he was probably
1960. He was probably alive, I would say. But
totally.
Yeah.
All right, so that was just some side history I wanted to make sure we hit on.
Yeah. Thanks for taking, for those listening or watching, take that home and take it to the bank because Christopher said it.
Take it up an alley and holler fish.
Barney then goes to leave, and what does he do? He makes a U-turn, and Gomer calls him out and comes running over screaming, "Citizens arrest! Citizens arrest! Citizens arrest!"
It's quick for Gomer.
It's very quick. Good. In another episode, if the writers had wanted to, Gomer would have just sat and looked at him as he drove away with his U-turn.
Can we talk about driving styles for a little bit?
Yeah.
This week, for whatever reason, I think I've just become like as comfortable. My wife says I've been like this forever, but I started to feel like I'm pretty loose with traffic laws. Parking. I've been doing a lot of U-turns, a lot of like weird backing up in streets if I want to. How do you drive? And I feel like that's a comfort in this town being my hometown, but I'm interested kind of because it hit me. This episode hit me at a good time in my life.
I don't take U-turns very seriously unless there's a big sign saying don't make a U-turn.
Okay. Do you jaywalk?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't jaywalk to the point of I would stop traffic, but
across the Beltway.
Yeah, I'm not jaywalking across the Beltway, but if I'm in there's a street and I
go across Braddock Road or something. Glebe.
I mean, I guess I've crossed Glebe at some point, but it's not really. It depends on the section of Glebe and the section of Braddock.
I'm just trying to pretend like I know Alexandria.
I mean, you're just going to start throwing out names.
Isn't Braddock one too?
Braddock is a road in Alexandria.
Cool. I'm crushing it.
You are crushing it. Good for you. I'm glad living here for as long as you did learn of a few streets in Alexandria.
Well, I lived in DC. I didn't live in.
I know you, but You did come to Alexandria every now and then
for your birthday.
For my birthday, okay.
And to visit my friend Caleb. Hi, Caleb.
Hi, Caleb. Thanks for listening, Caleb. He's where?
On Montclair Drive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this has gotten fascinating.
This is riveting. So the crowd runs over and is on Gomer's side. Gomer is just fired up, and he says, looks like they got two sets of laws, one for the citizen and one for the police.
Nightmare.
But that line is so resonates with so many people who've watched the show that my brother, who works at a government agency, was one time taking a guy's claim for something and filling out his paperwork. And the guy said, well, I have this rule because it's a little different because I'm a police officer. And my brother says to him, well, it looks like they got two sets of laws in this country, one for the citizens and one for the police. And the guy just busted out laughing.
Oh, that's great. All right. Yeah. That's another thing I'll try to incorporate.
Yeah, incorporate that when you're talking to law enforcement.
Right. Good. That and saying that's my car.
That's my car, and go up in an alley and holler fish. So Andy comes out, asks what's going on, and Barney calls Gomer a boob, which upsets Gomer even more, but I do think it's just funny to call someone a boob.
It's so funny. I wish it were more common now.
I've used it more frequently. I mean, and I've heard people use it. And when somebody calls someone a boob, you're kind of like, that sometimes is almost the worst. It's almost a worse insult than anything else.
You know, it equates to, let me equate this to high school personal violence. How about that? Because everybody's looking for that. To me, calling someone a boob is you can't really respond to it. There was a friend of mine, two of my friends were in a stupid argument in high school and over like a basketball game or something, like a pickup basketball game. And one of the kids didn't want to start a fight, but wanted to kind of let the other guy know that he was mad. So he just slapped him across the face. And talking to the guy that slapped him was like, I knew that if I punched him, he would punch me back and I'd get beaten up. But if I slapped him, you can't really hit back after a slap in like a high school fight. And so it kind of ended it, and he won. He was able to display his anger, but without any retaliation. I think that's what calling someone a boob is.
I think your friend was lucky. I think he's just lucky to got it all off and smash his face in. It's kind of what my guess is. I've never heard of anybody say, "Oh yeah, he slapped me. I felt powerless. I couldn't do anything." He was half my size, but I wasn't going to hit him for slapping me. So Gomer gets upset, and Andy says he can't insult people like that, which is fair. Mm-hmm. Then Andy asks what happened, and Barney says, nutsy come up on me screaming, "Citizens Reyes, Citizens Reyes." Which is great stuff. And then Andy just realizes they just need to cut their losses, and he pulls Barney aside and says he needs to write out a ticket before this gets out of hand, and then go in the courthouse and settle this in private. Which my assumption is we'll settle this in private means I'm just going to tear the ticket up.
Yeah, you're not going to get a ticket for sure. Yeah. That's a different rule for police officers.
One for the citizens and one for the police. But Barney is not happy, and Gomer won't shut up. And finally, Andy gets him to write out the ticket. But Barney is livid and thinks he's been made a fool of. And back at the courthouse, Barney is still just so angry. And Andy's trying to tell him he did the right thing and the people in Mayberry see him as a big man. But he never says, let's just tear the ticket up. Because I think it's almost escalated beyond that point.
I think so, too. I think Andy's mad at Barney.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think so, too. And Andy says he'll pay the $5 fine for him. I mean, he's still trying to de-escalate the situation, and Barney's just not having it. And he says no one's going to pay the fine and that he'll take the 5 days in jail instead. And
we've talked about this before. It's just $5 versus 5 days in jail. That is not an equivalency.
No. I mean, no. It's crazy.
I thought that with way different scale. I think I mentioned this before, but like on the anti-copyright, it's like $250,000, which is a crazy amount of money, or 10 years of your life. And it's like, whew. Let's hope we can put together $250,000 to get out of this.
I'd be like, can I get on a payment plan?
Yeah, it's like, cool. Let me call a payday lender, see what I can figure out.
Yeah, really. I mean, or can I pay a little bit a month? I mean, So Andy tells him he's making a fool of himself, but Barney is just, I mean, he's gone at this point. He says Andy will look like a fool because his deputy and ex-best friend has been jailed for a minor offense. There is nobody in Mayberry who is going to hear the story of Barney being jailed and think it's Andy Taylor's fault.
Correct. I was also hoping he'd say an ex-cousin, because in the pilot, he says that they're cousins.
And I think they still do insist that they're cousins. They just don't talk about it as much.
Yeah.
But as we go to commercial, Barney just glares at him with this funny glare and goes, "Who looks foolish now, Sheriff?"
This is great. This is a new thing. What I liked about this whole trope might not be the right word, but the situation is you've got the exact same set, environment, same characters, same thing, where Barney has just like thrown fits left and right, but is a completely different character in a completely different situation in all of the same similarities. They found a way to write some new into very old.
I completely agree. And after the break, Andy comes into jail that night, and Barney is in his cell smoking. Not very well, but smoking, trying to smoke.
He looks like Steve Buscemi here.
You think?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, which is funny because, I mean, I'm sure it was 1963. I'm sure Don Knotts was a smoker, but he manages to play it up like a guy who can't smoke.
Totally.
And he asks Andy if he is doing a bed jack. And then he's carrying on with some silliness. He calls him a screw and, and everything like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And Everett Greenbaum said they just said, let's do something out of it. Edward G. Robinson or James Cagney movie and just have him act like a tough guy.
Yeah, it's great. It plays.
Yeah. And so, you know who it's time to show up on the scene. Obviously, it's
Otis Redding.
Otis Campbell.
Otis Campbell.
Yeah. Two very, very different people. So Otis comes in singing, "I'm sorry, I broke your heart, mother."
You're going to do it again?
I just was trying to add context to what was taking place. It turns out his anniversary for taking his first drink was 27 years ago, and he's confused to see Barney in the cell, and then he thinks he's in the cell with Andy, and then he thinks he's in the Twilight Zone, and then Andy puts Otis in his cell.
Here's a take. It shows that Otis's alcoholism isn't a sad thing. It's really a beautiful thing, because he knew from the moment he first had it that he loved it and was going to have a positive, long relationship with alcohol. What do you think?
I think you should really take that spill to elementary and schools and junior highs. I think that would be awesome.
What was your first alcohol you ever had? Do you remember?
I think my parents let me have like a very small glass of wine at like some dinner that I really wanted to try. I think I was probably 13 or something like that. And I was like, I don't see what the big deal is, but It was such a small amount.
Got it.
What about you?
I had some peppermint schnapps at that kid that slapped that other kid's house after we did some snowmobiling.
How old were you?
I was probably 16. I was a little,
okay.
Yeah, I was older than you. It was great.
And I mean, it sounds like Otis has as we said about the show, it's very much of a alcoholism is just portrayed as kind of funny.
Totally. Similar to, yeah.
So once he gets in the cell, he starts antagonizing him, saying they're busting out tonight and saying Barney's in jail, and Andy's had enough and just leaves. And Barney and Otis just trade threats. Hopefully, eventually they go to bed.
I pictured this, though, that they didn't. They just did it all night long.
Yeah, eventually Otis has to pass out at some point, but I don't get the impression that Barney ever gets a wink of sleep that night.
Agree.
So the next morning, Aunt B comes in with breakfast. Barney just refuses to eat.
He's on a hunger strike.
And then Aunt B leaves the food and heads out, and Barney comes out of the jail with his resignation letter. it's clear Barney wants Andy to beg him to stay, but Andy just accepts it and leaves. I mean, which is, that's all Andy can do in this situation. I mean, Barney's just...
Yeah, swat him out. I see this more as a timeout than a jailing.
Yeah, well, I mean, Barney literally put himself in timeout. And so it's here that Barney finally realizes he's made a mistake and he's played his hand, and he just is really kind of like very despondent finally that, he pushed this as far as he could push it.
Yeah, it sets in. The days all of a sudden feel real, like you've been there forever, but have you not actually been there at all, and you're still new? I just read a prison book. That's how I'm kind of pulling this from.
What prison book did you read?
Oh boy, I don't remember what it's called. It's by.
Did you really read a book about prison, or did you just make this up?
I did. It's by Virginia Reeves, and I did it on audiobook, and so it's like a day and a half. And I found if I do audiobooks, then I don't ever remember the name of it's Work Like Any Other by Virginia Reeves.
What prison is it about?
It's about some like a jail in Alabama.
Oh.
In the 1920s.
Oh, it sounds like a lovely place to be in jail.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good heartwarming story. Any parents on the phone, read it to your kids.
Yeah, there you go. So at Wally's, Opie comes up to Gomer and asks if he can fill his tire up with air, which Gomer tells him is free, but explains that gas isn't, because if they gave away gas for free, they wouldn't be in business very long.
Really smart.
Yeah.
Capitalist.
Opie then tells Gomer that Barney quit, and Gomer is a bit forlorn. I think he realizes this has all gone a little nuts. He then tells Opie to tell everybody that Gomer says, hey, which is something he says a lot, as well as his cousin does on future episodes. I think this might be the first time I've heard Gomer say it.
Yeah, well, and so what stuck out to me here was not I say hey, it's Gomer says hey.
Gomer says hey, yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Which is a Southern thing. I mean, people say, tell them I said hey, or tell them so-and-so says hey.
Up here in the North, we just tell people hello ourselves.
That's more efficient, I suppose. Back at the jail, the phone rings.
That reminds me, there's a line in Ocean's 11. George Clooney walks out of a bar and he says, tell your mother hi for me. And she says, tell her yourself, should be on stage in 5 minutes.
I forgot. Yeah, that's funny. Back at the jail, the phone rings. Barney refuses to answer, but Otis finally gets out of bed and goes to do it. And it's Gomer saying there's a holdup at Wally's filling station, and Otis runs for help.
Otis is not... He moves fast on his toes, but he doesn't think great on his toes. Oh, he's not trained, for what the rapid response should be in that situation, and it's clear.
No, Hal Smith, who plays Otis, is very, very agile.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Did great.
Yeah. So Andy pulls up at the filling station and learns that Gomer made the whole thing up just to get Andy and Barney back together.
So sweet.
And It's so sweet. It's something. I don't know if it's sweet or whatever it is. Just then, Barney runs up with a gun to help, and Andy tells him Gomer made the whole thing up. And Gomer stands there with just the goofiest grin, which is kind of the Gomer we know and love on this show, just not that quick. And then Barney gets angry and writes him up, and then gets in the car and tells Andy to come on. And Andy shakes his head and gets in, but Barney does a U-turn in the parking lot as he leaves, and Gomer runs after him screaming citizens arrest, but Barney just drives away, which is what Barney should have just done the first time. He should have just kept going and not stopped to deal with Gomer the first time. I agree. We go to commercial, and this is some really funny stuff. It is just funny when Gomer just starts, and you're like, it's a U-turn, and you're turning, he's swinging around in a gas station. That's not a U-turn.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and so in the epilogue, Barney tells Andy he's sorry and that he made a fool of himself, and Andy says that it's okay and they should get back to work. And Barney asks what he's going to do with the letter, and Andy says, well, I guess I'll file it away with all the others.
That's such a good line.
Oh, yeah. It turns out that Barney has submitted several letters of resignation, which I had a coworker one time who I didn't work with him for that long, but he was in a spot where he was kind of, have you ever had a coworker who You've never worked with anybody. Okay. You ever had a coworker who has a somewhat vital function that no one else understands, and they almost leverage it to the hilt? I felt like IT people did that very early on, especially you were still in high school, but they definitely did it early on when in the day and age of the internet. I mean, our IT guy, one place that I used to work at, when we'd have the Christmas party, he would literally bring 2 escorts to the holiday party.
Oh, you've told me about this guy.
I told you about this guy, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I get that a little bit where, for me, it's people will say, things are different here. And then they'll explain how things are everywhere else. And it's like, oh, okay. All right. There's your specialty.
I did have another coworker who he would get mad and threaten to quit a lot and say that with leadership and things like that. Somebody said he he got upset and he quit. And I was like, he's quit more times than Barney Fife. That's what I said. And,
great.
And they got it, even though they weren't fans of the show. But you just hear the word Barney Fife and you kind of know what you're talking about.
I agree. I love it.
So,
good line.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got to deliver that.
Me too. So, how many whistles would you give this?
I'm going to give this 10.
Me too.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, ding,
Then
ding.
wait, hold on. For the video stuff, isn't there a way to do... We have celebrations. Yay!
That is the most pathetic celebration I've seen. Just a little. I mean, we can do, if you want in the future, we can hold up signs that say how many whistles we give it.
No, we can't do that. We'll just celebrate like this. Things like emojis and things like that. It'll be great.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, any final thoughts?
No, I really enjoyed this.
Me too. Thank you for that. That's nice. Well, thank you for listening. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we do Opie and His Merry Men. Until then, Christopher, just give us a citizen's arrest.
Meow! Citizen's arrest! Citizen's arrest!